Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Wing Commander Brett McDonald. 60 years ago today, the first contingent of the Australian Army training team arrived in Saigon, South Vietnam. The Australian Army Training Team Vietnam, AATTV, usually referred to simply as the team, was one of the elite Australian units in the Vietnam War. Over the next decade, more than 1,000 personnel, including 10 soldiers from the New Zealand Army, served in the unit, more than half of whom were infantrymen. Their roles were extremely diverse and included those of combat unit advisors, special forces commanders, rural and province advisors, training instructors, and service of the staff of the United States and South Vietnamese government organisations and projects. The team remains arguably the most highly decorated unit of the Australian Army, receiving 4 Victoria Crosses, the only ones awarded to soldiers in the Vietnam War. Many other bravery awards and 2 unit citations. 33 AATTV personnel died during the war in Vietnam, and 122 were wounded in action. They were the last Australian troops to leave the field in December 1972. This evening, we warmly welcome the family of Warrant Officer Class 2, Kevin George Conway. A member of the team, Warrant Officer Conway was killed in action on the 6th of July 1964. His story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome the members of the Australian Army Training Team Vietnam and their families who are joining us for this evening's service. We thank you for your service. We are honoured to acknowledge Her Excellency the Honourable Dame Annette King, High Commissioner of New Zealand to Australia, General Angus Campbell, Chief of the Defence Force, Major General Jason Blaine, representing the Chief of Army, Mr. Tim Bayliss, Director of War Graves, Office of Australian War Graves, representing the Repatriation Commissioner and Department of Veterans Affairs. Major General Adrian Clunies-Ross, retired, former Chairman of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, Colonel Shane Dries, United States Army Attaché, United States Embassy, Mr. Jim Gilchrist, President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, Woden Sub-Branch. We also warmly welcome the delegation representing the Royal Brunei Armed Forces and the Brunei Ministry of Defence. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier.
party, reverse! Catapult party, restored!
If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Catapult party, 8-10, jump! Catapult party, present, arms!
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free, with golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is good by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Catapult party, shoulder, arms. Catapult party, order, arms.
Thank you. You may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Warrant Officer Class 2, Kevin George Conway. Kevin Conway was born on the 11th of December 1928 in Brisbane, one of 8 children born to John and Eileen Conway. He grew up in Wellington Point, Redlands, where his parents owned and ran a boating and fishing business. He went on to work as a fisherman. Kevin Conway joined the Army on the 22nd of January 1947, enlisting for service in the interim Australian Army 1 month after his 18th birthday. Having served with the Australian War Crimes Section based in Hong Kong, he discharged on the 18th of February 1949 and worked as a farmer and later for Queensland Railways as a bridge painter and labourer. He rejoined the Australian Army on the 19th of November 1952 and in January 1955 was posted to the 1st Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, which was deployed to the Republic of Korea on peace monitoring duties. He returned to Australia in March 1956 when 1 RAR posted home. Now a sergeant, Conway deployed to Malaya with 1 RAR in late August 1959. By this time, the Malayan emergency was all but over, but the Australians still conducted patrols in Kedah and Perak looking for communist terrorist forces. He returned to Australia in early November 1961. In November 1963, Conway was promoted to Temporary Warrant Officer Class 2 and deployed to South Vietnam as a member of the Australian Army training team. He was initially posted to the National Training Centre at Dong Da, where, alongside other members of the AATTV, he trained South Vietnamese soldiers. In June 1964, Conway was attached to a US Special Forces A-team at Camp McBride at Nam Dong, located in a secluded valley 50 kilometres northwest of Da Nang. The principal role of this outpost was border surveillance due to its proximity to Laos. The outpost was home to 372 personnel, including 12 US Special Forces soldiers, Conway, a civilian anthropologist, South Vietnamese Special Force soldiers, and Nung mercenaries. Just before 3 a.m. on the 6th of July, a Viet Cong battalion launched a coordinated attack on the camp. As mortar rounds crashed down, Conway was among the first to act. He and US Master Sergeant Gabriel Alamo made a 30-metre dash, firing their weapons as they went, to a mortar pit inside the inner perimeter. When they arrived, they found another US soldier firing illumination rounds and several Nung soldiers providing covering fire. As Conway and Alamo entered the mortar pit, Conway was shot in the head and mortally wounded. Alamo was wounded by grenade fragments soon after. Those in the mortar pit made Conway as comfortable as they could during the fierce fighting. He died from his wound around 30 minutes later. Conway was the first Australian battle casualty of the Vietnam War. He was 35 years old. The battle ended 5 hours later. As well as Conway, 3 US soldiers, including Alamo, had been killed along with 59 South Vietnamese soldiers. A further 65 men were wounded. Conway was initially laid to rest in the Mac Din Chi Cemetery in Saigon. In October 1964, his remains were transferred to Singapore and interred in the Ulu Pandan Cemetery. In 1975, his remains were reinterred in Kranj War Cemetery. On the 2nd of June 2016, Conway's remains were repatriated to Australia along with 31 others, many of whom had been killed during the Vietnam War and buried in Malaysia. He was laid to rest with full military honours in Cleveland Cemetery, Queensland. Conway was recommended for the Victoria Cross, but as Australia was not at war and Conway's role in repelling the assault had been limited prior to his death, the award was denied. Conway's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among more than 500 Australians who died while serving in the Vietnam War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Warrant Officer Class 2 Kevin George Conway, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
Catapult party, shoulder, arms.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary him, nor near the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
Catapult party, present, arms. Catapult party, shoulder, arms.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Catapult party, in words, turn. Catapult party, quick, march.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. And we wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.